Hello, I'm Joan Childs. Welcome to part 6 of a 10-part series on the inner child work. The inner child work has so many modalities that are involved in the process of working through some of the childhood wounds or all of the childhood wounds and the trauma that where they endure, the client endures, that this may not be enough time to be able to give you all of them. So what I can give you today, I'm going to try to present two major pieces of work, which is Gestalt work that was actually invented by Fritz Perls many, many years ago. But we kind of tailor make it to what we call chair work. And the other one would be parts work. I'll try to do as much as I can in today's video, and what I can't do, I would do in video number 7 next time. So let's talk about chair work. The individual or the client has a lot of trauma from early childhood wounds that have stayed throughout the years into adulthood. And that will manifest into feeling not worth it, well, not worthwhile, not valued, not that he or she matters. And it gives a very low self-esteem, low self-image. And so what we try to, how do we have a corrective experience? One of the modalities, not all of them, but this one is having a conversation, a negotiation with that part that we would call the inner critic, that part that was an injunction by the parent when they said, you'll never amount to anything, you're useless, you're worthless, you're not smart, you're stupid. Anyway, all these negative injunctions that were given when the child was young and vulnerable, impressionable, and unable to protect himself or herself. So these things stay along in you, and they go deep into the brain, into the neocortex, and into the limbic system, which is the seat of emotions. And they manifest into behaviors over the years that reflect that this person has a low sense of self-esteem. They've never had a secure attachment, and they feel less than. And they carry that feeling of less than all through their adult life until it's treated. So what we do is we set up 2 chairs, and the chairs are facing each other, and they're about maybe 3 or 4 feet apart at the most. And in one chair is the client, who represents the person that he or she is today, with all of these negative self-talk feelings and feelings of low self-esteem. And in the other chair, which is an empty chair until we put that critic in there, he looks at that inner critic in that empty chair and imagines that there is a part of him, because we are made up of parts. We are not monolithic. We have several parts. And myself, for instance, I'm a therapist, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a musician, and I'm a writer, I'm a speaker, I am a teacher. I have a dark side that I work through. Her name, actually gave her a name. Her name was Dolores. And if you read my first book, The Myth of the Maiden, you would read all about it. But everybody has a dark side, and it stays dark until we embrace it. And we cannot escape it unless, and if we do, it just ends up kicking us in the ass. So we have to really embrace that part of us, the dark side, as Carl Jung called the shadow side. In this part is the critic, the inner critic. So we have two parts. The person that came to the therapy, who's sitting in one chair, and in the empty chair is going to be the shadow side, the inner critic. We gave it a name, and they're going to have a conversation. And from moving the energy from one chair to the other chair, in other words, when they are the client, they're in one chair, and then when they go over to the other chair, they are the inner critic. So there's an energy that moves from one part to the other part. And it begins something like this. So the client sits in the chair and looks at the empty chair and says, I know you're there, you've been there all my life, and my life is miserable because you keep on telling me how bad I am, how stupid I am, how I'm never going to amount to anything. So it's not working for me. I want to move on. I want to embrace you. I want to deal with you. I want to have a conversation with you. And I want you to know that you're never, ever going to leave me. So we have to try to find a work out, because I need you. I need you, and you need me too. So if we could work together as a partnership, it would really help me. So can you explain to me, please, why do you feel that I'm all these things that you call me, that I'm stupid, that I'm never going to amount to anything, and that I don't have an ounce of intelligence, and that I'm scared of everything, or I'm neurotic, all these things that you keep telling me, and I keep listening to you, and I feel awful. It makes me feel anxious, and I actually get depressed over it because I feel like I have no control over my life with these kind of thoughts and this attitude that you put into me, that that I can't handle myself, and it hurts me. Can you please tell me why you do this and what I can do to help you stop or make you stop? Is there anything I can do? Then the client gets up and he goes to the other chair and he looks back at the person that was just sitting as the client, and he becomes the critic, the inner critic, a part of him that's self-judgment, but criticizes him, and that can be contempt to himself. And he answers back, well, he might say, well, it's true. Your father always told you that you never would amount to anything, and you haven't. And you don't really know, you're really stupid, basically. You don't have a brain in your head. I don't know what happened to you. And this goes on, and then I have that part go back to being the client again and looking at his inner critic and saying something like, I ask him to challenge that message, and I ask him to say something like, I don't believe you. I don't believe all those. That was my father talking, and now you're talking to me like that. But that's not helpful. Is there anything that I can do to work out some kind of a deal with you? I'm really going faster than this goes, so it goes much slower. But his content, his dialogue is, can we negotiate? Is there something that I can do that can contribute to having you back off, because it's really been a terrible life that I've had. You feel like you're always on my back. You're always saying nasty things to me. You make me feel worthless, make me feel less than, and I'm ashamed. I have so much shame inside of me that it's making me sick. I'm actually getting physical illness because of this. The doctor tells me most of this is psychological or somatic. So I'm trying to work out something with you. I'm not asking you to get out of my life, because from what my therapist tells me, you're probably the most powerful part. But I think it could be more useful and more helpful, and we can negotiate something. So what do you want me to do to be able to work something out with you? Then he has to get up, and I'm using a he, it can be a she, of course. He gets up and he goes into the opposite chair, and he becomes the critic again. Once again, he is now the inner critic, and he looks back at the client, and he says, I'm not sure if there's anything you can do. You've been like this all your life, or since you were 3-4 years old. It's part of who you are, and I'm not leaving. I'm staying here because I have a reason for being here. Then the client gets up and goes back to the client's chair and says, well, what is your reason? And then he switches back again. Don't forget, the energy is now moving from the client to the inner critic. This goes back and forth until they can come to some kind of a resolution. Sometimes it just takes a little while, maybe 2 or 3 movements, and sometimes it takes much longer. But it is resolvable when he gets to the point that the inner critic will finally say, okay, here is what I need for you to do. And he tells them, and it could be anything. It could be, you need to resolve this with your father, and maybe write a letter and tell him that this is not true, and tell him how it's interfered with the quality of your life, so on and so on. I help with the dialogue, and I try to give words to prompt, so that the patient or the client doesn't feel helpless or hopeless. Some of them get it right away, and they figure it out that these are 2 parts that have to negotiate a deal in order to effectuate positive change and stop being so critical, so self-critical. But it depends on really the client themselves. A lot of people think they feel very embarrassed when they do this, because they feel like it's an act that they're doing, and at first it does feel like an act. But once they get it, and once they integrate it, and they practice it, and they take the time to realize that the energy actually shifts from the client to the inner critic, they finally realize that this was something that they were told. This was something that happened to them. It isn't about them, it's about what happened to them. These early negative injunctions by dysfunctional families or dysfunctional parents, it could be So it could be siblings, it could be a teacher, but somehow it really became integrated into them early in life when they didn't really know how to protect themselves. So what we have to do is work out a deal, negotiate a deal that the inner critic will back off, and then after that's over, they have to know what they can do when they hear it in order to fight it. So they must learn some positive affirmations, and I usually give them some that have been written that are all over the internet, particularly ones that have been written by Virginia Satir. The one that I like the best is "I am me," and I have them post it on the mirror and say it in the bathroom when they're brushing their teeth. Look at it, and as soon as they finish brushing their teeth, they have to say those affirmations, and they must do it at least once a day. Twice a day is even better, because they have to substitute negative self-talk with positive self-talk. And after a while, new neural pathways begin to form. And after about 30 days of doing it every day, suddenly they are not hearing that inner critic any longer. And most of my clients who come to me have an inner critic. I had one also. So it's part of the human experience to have a dark side, to have a shadow side, as Jung talked about it. And if you try to kick it out and not deal with it, it makes it worse. So the answer is to negotiate, is to talk to it. And that is one way we do parts work. The other way is if we have a parent or a person that hurt us and that abused us or in some way neglected us or abandoned us, we put that person in the chair, not the shadow side this time, but the person. We imagine, even if the person is dead, because we don't carry the person that's really out there or in the grave with us. We carry the person in us that was them, that gave us those injunctions and made us feel less than and not worthwhile. And we ended up with a poor self-esteem, insecurities, and all kinds of neuroses. So we have to put that person, let's say it was the mother or the father. It doesn't matter who it is. We let the client choose, who do you want to talk to and what do you want to say? And it is, again, a little bit difficult for them because they feel they're on stage, or that it is staged, or it might be really not genuine. But once they get going with it, it's amazing how they're being able to let out words that they didn't have in their childhood, that they didn't know how to protect themselves. So they're saying something like, what you did was wrong. You hurt me. And they say why you hurt me and what you did to me to make me feel abandoned or abused. And say things that the words that are available now as an adult that they didn't have available as a child. And then I make it stronger, and I make it louder, and I say it again, repeat it, say it again, until they have it, they feel the words are out. And then I can, at that moment, it depends, I can really transform that particular modality into anger work. It just really depends. You have to know the client. You can move it into anger work where you can give them a bat, or I use a pipe and a pad, a punching bag, and move them into physical work. If they're not comfortable with that, we do that in a neuro-linguistic programming where I put them in an altered state and I have them go back to the parent and see the parent when they were a child, but go back as an adult and say the things to the parent that they were unable to say because of the fact that they were just too little and they didn't have the words. They only had the feelings, and they didn't feel loved. They didn't feel secure. So now as an adult, they have access to words that were not available as a child. So those are two modalities that I do with Gestalt work. The other is parts, and it's part of the work that I just explained. But I'm not going to share that with you because I see that I'm running into 15 minutes, and that's all I want to do. So in the video number 7, I will talk to you about parts work. In the meantime, it's a good idea to see Inside Out, because it gives you an kind of like, well, it's a cartoon, but it gives you the idea of how many different feelings that we have, the range of emotions that we're not even aware of, and that's what we use in parts work. So in parts work 2, which would be video 7, I'll go into more detail with it. But thank you for listening, and I hope to see you again, or I hope you can see me again in video 7. Be well, be careful, be safe, stay well. Bye.